Hello chess friends and welcome to the Art of Chess channel, and welcome back to our Queen's Gambit Declined studies. So in these studies we have covered some great openings like the Chigorin defense, the Tarrasch defense, the semi-Tarrasch defense, the Harvard's attack, and many more. And today we're continuing with our Queen's Gambit Declined studies and the so-called exchange variation. So the exchange variation we have started recently with our introduction video. Here's the link of the video, you can also check it out. In that video we have explained the most important strategic concepts of the Queen's Gambit Declined exchange variation. But today we're starting with a different sideline that I think it's very popular in top grandmaster level. In my opinion, this is really something that you should know, and I've sorted out really beautiful game in this line, played by two world champions, played by the world champion Magnus Carlsen against Vladimir Kramnik back from 2016. And I think you can really use this game as your cornerstone of this particular line, because I think in this game you see really the most important strategic ideas, but also some cool tactical possibilities in this particular line. So let's see now what is the Queen's Gambit Declined, what is the exchange variation of the Queen's Gambit Declined, and what's so special about this particular sidelines that we have prepared here. So here Magnus opened with the move d4. d5 was the move by Vladimir Kramnik, c4, and after move e6, you see we have the Queen's Gambit Declined so far. So after move knight to c3, knight to f6, we have c takes d5, so the exchange variation. We're trading off now the pawns in the center, and now after move e takes d5, we have now the move bishop to g5. This is now the so-called positional line. In my opinion, it's simply the best approach that white should play here. The threat is of course bishop to f6. If you then recapture with the queen, then of course the queen is disconnected from the protection of the pawn, so then knight to d5 could happen. If you don't react correctly, then you could also face bishop to f6, then you have to take out with the pawn, and then it messes up simply the pawn structure here on the f file. So black really needs to be careful. So that's why most of the time black is playing really a fixing line, plays really a solid move c6, fixing now the pawn in the center with the move d5, and now white plays on normal development. Here in the beginning we'll explain also in the continuation of our series of the Queen's Gambit Declined exchange variation, this particular setup that white is trying to do. The setup is this: we're trying bishop to d3, queen to c2, knight to e2, f3, e4. So this will be also a very important line that you have to study from both sides in this particular line. But so far we're starting now this line, bishop to f5. You see this move many times. In my opinion, this move you should try to avoid when you're playing the game with the black pieces. I'm not saying this is a mistake, inaccuracy, or blunder, but in my opinion you can have really many positional problems, and you have such a tough play. I think in my opinion you're playing maybe this bishop to f5 line if you're trying to get a draw or something. In my opinion, I would love to play now this game from white's perspective, because here I think Magnus Carlsen showed really his great skills, his such beautiful position understanding in this particular line against Vladimir Kramnik. Vladimir played now the move bishop to f5, but now you see there are two good choices. You can play queen to b3, attacking the pawn on b7 immediately, or you can play queen to f3. In my opinion, this move bishop queen to f3 is more direct. In my opinion, this is the way to go. And here also Magnus played the move queen to f3. You see now the bishop is hanging. Now you have to retreat with the bishop, and now Magnus simply trades up the bishop for a knight. So this is now the position that we'll analyze today. You can maybe say, okay dude, this is nothing special, this is not the position that I want to study. But as I said, in my opinion, this is a position that you could face, at least from white's perspective, and in my opinion this is something that you should know what you're doing. So now black has two choices. What should black do here? You can of course take out with the pawn, and you can also take out with the queen. Let's see now first of all this idea with the pawn. This wasn't played in the game here, played by Magnus and Kramnik, but here after move g takes f6, we have to understand, I think in this particular position, okay, the queens are still on the board, but the downside about this line is of course that black will never be able to castle, I think, kingside, because of the weakened pawn structure here already. So you could face many problems on f5, h5, h6 is weak, g7 is weak, so the f6 pawn is weak. So in my opinion, in this particular line we're searching for new opportunities. Here the way to go is first of all the move rook to d1. if rook to d1 happens, then black will never be able to push the pawn on c5 when you have the bishop pair. Then you want, of course, to break, to open the position as much as you can. So the only move that I see that could open the position is the move c5, but c5 is not a possibility, because then of course the d5 is weak. So many times you're trying this idea, rook to d1. Again, I'm pointing out this wasn't played in the game, but I think we should also understand the position after g takes f6. So let's see now, maybe just a continuation, knight to d7. We're simply playing bishop to d3. What we're not trying to do, don't do that if you're playing, of course, the game from white's perspective. Never, but never give up this bishop for this bishop. You're waiting him to take. If bishop to d3, rook to d3, then we can use many times this kind of an idea, maybe to reroute the knight here on h5, or you can also try to reroute your knight to f5. So don't give up your light square bishop for the light square bishop on g6. If you do that, then your opponent could improve his pawn structure with f takes g6 or h takes g6. So don't do that. So that's, I think, the point. So you can still stay with the bishop on d3, but now after queen to b6, you just retreat. There are many games in the database in this particular line, but the downside, I think, if black castles now queenside, if black is trying to get out of this mess, because as we said in the beginning, he has a certain weakened pawn structure on the king side. In my opinion, we just normally develop here. Knight to f3, bishop to d6, and look at this now. We can even change now the direction of the attack. We can try maybe a queenside attack. We can stay, I think, a little bit longer with the king in the center, because in my opinion, there's again not a good way for black to open the center. c5 can always bet with knight to d5. So you see, maybe black is trying sort of battery, trying maybe rook to g8 or something, trying to attack the g file. But now we can attack immediately. Look at this. Even if you try here something like f5, kingside castling, we can play. Maybe you can try to open the position this way. But notice there is always also this tactical shot. You should not forget about this. When the c file is open, there are many times some opportunities. Knight to d5, knight to b5 or something, rook to c8. See, look at this, what happens if you take now rook to c1, traps the queen. So this is also a common tactic that's possible in these types of structures. So of course, this is a position that probably will not happen to you, but don't forget about the common motifs in this position. So as I said, here in my opinion, g takes f6 leads into a okay dynamic line for black, but the only way that I see for black that black could open the position is when black is playing f5 and maybe then afterwards f4. There's simply no other pawn move that could create really some dynamics in black's camp. So that's, I think, the downside about this particular line. So in the game here, Vladimir Kramnik took with queen takes f6, and here Magnus accepted the challenge, played queen to f6, g takes f6, and you see now in this position we should really understand first of all the concept of weak square. So now there's not so much that can be done. We cannot say, okay, white is winning the game for sure here because we have reached now this position, but I think we have to understand the weak squares in black's camp. So there is this weak square in f5, there is this weak square in h5. In my opinion, the h5, okay, we can attack because of the possibility maybe when we get with the knight on h5, then we can attack the pawn on f6. But the f5 square is a square that I think we should really search here. The f5 is such a weak square. Even if black advances the pawn somehow to f5 and protects somehow the f5 square sort of, then he blocks out his own light square bishop. So don't forget about it. So this bishop should never be traded off in the way that we have talked about. You should never play bishop to d3 and then improve your opponent's pawn structure with the move bishop takes d3, because as we said, a bishop takes g6, pardon me, because he'll play simply h takes g6 or f takes g6. If your opponent wants to give up his bishop for your light square bishop in the later stage, okay, he can do so, but then he also lost again the protection of the f5 square. So don't forget about it. So in the beginning of this line, we're just battling now for the f5 square. f5, f5, f5. That's now the goal that we're playing here. So in the continuation, Magnus played now knight to f3, knight to d7, played by Kramnik, and now knight to h4, immediately battling for the f5 square. So we have here bishop to e7. If you play bishop to b4 here, if you try to pin here the knight, actually we can even go king to d2. It's nothing wrong with this position. We can even stay with the king in the center because the queens are off the board, and when the queens are off the board, then the game is not so complicated. Then the king is perfectly fine here in the center. Again, I'm pointing out, even if something like c5 happens, we can still play a3 if he wants to take, he can do so, but still I think the structural weaknesses remain, and in a potential endgame this could be a favorable game for white. So here in the continuation, Kramnik played bishop to e7. Magnus continues with his plan: knight to e2, knight to g3. You can guess the square, it's the square f5. Now we have knight to b6. If we try f5 here, maybe to attack the knight immediately, there is now a very common line that's played also very often in top grandmaster level. It's the line g3. I myself don't like this line because it leads into complications for white after bishop to h4, g takes h4. Okay, still white should be better here because of this really bad bishop here. This bishop is just a part of the pawn chain, but I have to be honest, I want more out of this position. I don't want simplifications anymore. Now, in my opinion, knight to f3 is perfectly fine. And now in the later stage, we can then play maybe knight to f4, knight to d3, knight to e5. We can also play h4, h5, attacking the bishop. So I would not love to simplify the game further by trading off more pieces. That's, I think, the point about this line. So after move knight to e2, we have knight to b6 by Kramnik, and now Magnus continues with his plan: knight to g3. Really great stuff. Now he's trying to occupy the f5, and there's simply no good protection anymore to protect the square. This is simply a long-term weakness in black's position. So in the continuation, we had bishop to b4. Okay, this is an annoying check, but as I said, the queens are off the board. The queens are not endangering the king anymore. Now the king is perfectly fine, even on the square d1. So we have here now knight to a4, and now a beautiful tactic that I think we have to know. Knight to f5 here was played by Magnus Carlsen. There is one game in the database where black fall for this. Here black took the pawn on b7, but actually this is not working because you get simply this one. You have to play now knight to from knight takes b2, king to c2. If you play, of course, here with your knight, then of course king to b3 traps one of these pieces. So that's why black needs now to secure the king, the knight on c4. Now we just take bishop to c4, d takes c4, and now we just attack here the bishop. If black maybe plays the move c5, still they can kick away this bishop with a move a3, bishop to a5, and now we just grab the pawn. We can also play something like knight to g7, knight takes g6, knight to d6 is an opportunity. So look at this, how dangerous these knights are in the continuation. Also, the rook could come into the game, doubling up the rooks maybe on the 7th rank. I think we can agree that white is here much better position. So that's why after knight to f5, you see you cannot take out the pawn on b2. This gave Magnus Carlsen extra time to finally occupy the f5 square. Really great play by Magnus Carlsen. So king to d7, we have now rook to b1, king to e6, bishop to d3, protecting now the knight on f5. We have a rook to c8, and notice how Magnus lined up every piece on the square f5. It was a huge weakness in the position. So here after move rook to c8, Magnus continues now to improve his pieces. Now he improved also the king here on e2. Bishop to f8, we have now g4. Now Magnus is attacking the king side where he's better, of course, because most of his pieces are simply directed towards the king side, and that's how you play chess. You should understand your strengths. Of course, Kramnik has some chances here on the queen side because he has here a certain pawn majority, but as we said also in the beginning, c5 could be risky because of the isolated pawn on d5, and that's exactly what here Kramnik's mistake was. He played now here the move c5. Okay, you can do it, but it's not basically improving the position of your pieces so much. A better idea was maybe to play here knight to b6, maybe then afterwards you play knight to c4. And in our introduction video we have talked about the common strategies, so please check out also our intro video where we have talked about the common strategies of the Queen's Gambit Declined exchange variation. Now knight to c4, maybe with an idea then to follow up with b5 is a good opportunity for black, maybe to cement a position like this. But c5 here by Kramnik led into this complication because now Magnus has the opportunity to play the move knight to f4, and knight to f4 is quite annoying here to handle. Let's see possible continuation. You can maybe play c takes d4. That was Kramnik's choice, but you can also play the move c4. This move c4 seems tempting, but actually we can play bishop to c2, kick away the knight, knight to b6 now, and now knight to f4. You have to step back and look at this. Now this is really an unpleasant game now for black to handle. what should you play? If you play h6, then we can play knight takes g6, f takes g6, and now with the knight to g3, this pawn is weak. If you advance it, then we simply take, include the rook into the game. So again, white is much better. Now again, we can use the f5 square in order to make progress. So in my opinion, again, this is not working for black. So after move knight to g2, so that's why Kramnik tried to somehow open the position, which is, I think, okay. You're trying to get somehow this bishop into the game. You're trying maybe to get a certain activity here on the second rank, but it's simply too slow. Magnus simply takes, e takes d4. We have bishop to d6, a very important move. You're controlling the f4 square further. You're not allowing this annoying check. But now Magnus continues with this plan. As we said, you are better on the king side. You have an advantage on the king side. That's the side that you're attacking. You don't touch anything on the queen side because it doesn't make sense. Now we just continue with our plan with move h4. So here we have h5 by Kramnik. If you play h6, it's not so good again, because you get this one h5. If you take, of course, bishop to f5, rook is hanging here on c8. So here you would be forced to retreat to h7. But now look at this with knight to g7. This is a messed up position. You get a check and you lose the piece. So it's not working. So that's why after move h4 by Magnus Carlsen, you have to play now a risky h5 move. But now knight to g7 is simply much better here position for white. White simply grabs now the pawn here on h5 and has, in my opinion, now a completely winning game here. So really great ideas by Magnus Carlsen. So he first occupied the square at f5, now continue with this plan, played aggressively on the king side. This is the way to go. Great play by Magnus. So bishop to d3. As we said, you don't want to ever trade off your opponent's bishop on g6. You wait him to take out on d3. Now the king is even getting closer towards the center. Really good position also now by the king. So king to d7. Now a knight to e3. Look how Magnus is again trying to occupy the f5 square. Really this is the most important strategic element of this particular line. Knight to b6, knight to g4, attacking now also the pawn on f6. We have rook to h8, and now rook to e1, simply now including all of the pieces into the game. So bishop to e7, knight to f5 is possible again. We have bishop to d8, and Magnus simply pushed the pawn further. We have rook to c8, b3, controlling the square c4, not allowing here maybe for black to improve somehow the knight and maybe go to d6, where it could maybe attack the knight on f5. So we have rook to c6, we have rook to c6 by Vladimir Kramnik, knight to e3, bishop to c7, and now here Magnus goes for simplification. He notices, okay, I have an extra pawn, and the cool part is it's a distant pass pawn, so many pieces are far away from the action. Look at this bishop is a little bit out of game, the knight is out of game. Now Magnus is saying, I'll just trade it off till the end, and then I just push the pawn. It's perfectly fine endgame strategy here. So rook to c1, rook takes c1, bishop to f4, rook to c5, attacking now combined with the knight here, the pawn on d5. Look at this, what happens. For instance, if you try bishop to h6, it wouldn't be so good because of knight to d5, and you see now you have to step back with your king, and now we can also take out this pawn. This bishop is weak, so in my opinion this is not working. So that's why after move rook to c5, we have here king to e6 by Magnus Carlsen, but now knight to g7 by Magnus. Kramnik has to step back again, and now a beautiful move here by Magnus Carlsen. Look at this, really tricky stuff. Knight to g4. For instance, if you take now bishop to h6, we have knight to h6, rook to h6, and then you get you can guess where you get the fork again on this beautiful square f5. Knight to f5 would be a possibility, so the game is over. So after knight to g4, Kramnik noticed his problems, played now knight to d7, rook to c2. We have now f5, knight to f5, a check, king to e6, but again the same tactical motif. So you can never take out the pawn because you're so vulnerable on f5. So we have here rook to e2, king to c6, rook to e8, again with the same strategy, trading off more pieces and go into a favorable endgame. Rook to e8, knight takes e8, knight to f8. Here after knight to e5, bishop to e5, d takes e5 was played. We have king to d7, knight to f6 by Magnus Carlsen. We have here now king to e6, and Magnus pushes the pawn further on h5. Here we have here in the continuation king to e5, knight to d7, really a beautiful deflection motif. Now you get the beautiful fork you have to take out now with the knight, but now the knight is not controlling the h7. h7 was played by Magnus Carlsen. Knight to c5, we have king to e2, and in this position Vladimir Kramnik resigns. So great game by Magnus Carlsen. He played here almost like the stock 315 engine without inaccuracies, mistakes or blunders. He had 98 accuracy percentage here, really well stuff by the world champion. And as I said, in my opinion, this is a cornerstone game that you can use in order to get a better understanding of this line of the move bishop to f5. There are of course opportunities for black to go in a different way, but in my opinion it's simply a calm game for white. White doesn't have complications here. You go queen to f3, basically black has to play now g6, and now you just trade it off and you have a comfortable game. You have always the opportunity to create this f5 weakness in the position, and you have noticed when the queens are on the board, maybe black will then castle queenside, and you saw the problems with this flank attack with b4, b5, knight to d5, knight to b5 are then tactical threats when the rook is coming on the c file, because when black is castling queenside, his king is always lined up on the c file where it's a semi-open file where we can attack the position. So in my opinion, this is a calm game for white. As I said, this is a cornerstone position. Notice always the f5 square, f5, f5, that's the way to go, and I think you could have a good game here from white's perspective. So okay, I hope that you enjoyed here Magnus Carlsen's approach, and I hope that you enjoyed his game. Really great positional play by the world champion. If you want to see more about the Queen's Gambit Declined, so please check out our whole series. We have more than 70 videos now about the Queen's Gambit Declined. As I said, there is Tarrasch defense, semi-Tarrasch, Chigorin defense, and many more. Here's the link of our whole playlist, and if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and chess is the best, of course.